Welcome to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. Former pop music star Kelly Moneymaker is an Alaska-based Samoan filmmaker making documentaries about the threats of climate change to traditional Alaska Native lifestyles. We'll speak with Moneymaker on our final day of broadcasting from the Arctic Encounter Summit in Anchorage, Alaska. We'll also speak with an Unungan tribal leader about her efforts to revitalize her culture and map an economic future for the remote Aleutian Islands. We're back after the news.
This is National Native News. I'm Jill Freitas. Opening ceremonies for the statewide Native Youth Olympics got underway at the Alaska Airlines Center in Anchorage Thursday. This year's NYO coordinator, Brittany Vo, says it's impressive to watch the procession of 400 athletes from across Alaska enter the stadium as they carry homemade banners that represent their schools and communities.
It's just exciting to have so much representation in one room, which I think is really powerful to see how one event can bring us all together.
Over the next 2 days, thousands of people will come to watch traditional Native games like the Alaska High Kick, the Seal Hop, and Stick Pole. Tests of skill, strength, and endurance, Vo says, are rooted in survival off the land.
It's really important to me because as a youth, I didn't always feel like pride in my culture, and the fact that these students come and they're proud to do these games is really important for self-esteem and confidence.
This year marks the 40th year that the Cook Inlet Tribal Council has hosted NYO. Since then, the games have continued to grow. Today, teams from more than 100 Alaska communities take part. The deadline to comment on a Trump administration proposal that could roll back a 2-decade ban on oil and gas drilling around a UNESCO World Heritage Site has since passed. Within 7 days, more than 70,000 comments were gathered by the BLM. KJZZ's Gabriel Pietrasio has more on the potential changes for public lands surrounding Chaco Canyon.
The Bureau of Land Management wants to repeal a Biden-era 10-mile buffer zone of more than 336,000 acres. Rich in oil and gas, some 40,000 wells already dot the greater Chaco landscape.
What we are fighting for is the last, right now, unleased federal lands.
Marissa Naranjo is from the Santa Clara Pueblo. She's with the New Mexico nonprofit Sovereign Energy.
Even when tribes lead, engage, and help shape the process over many years, at this point, there's no guarantee that those outcomes will be respected, as we're seeing by the 7-day public comment. It could set the tone for how sacred sites and public lands are treated nationwide.
The mineral leasing withdrawal in 2023 followed a 150-day comment period. For National Native News, I'm Gabriel Pietrasio.
After a year of working for the U.S. Department of the Interior, Scott Davis has stepped down from his role as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs. As Brian Bull of Buffalo's Fire reports, Davis is now back in North Dakota and the private sector.
Davis is a citizen of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe with Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa heritage. He's long been a familiar face across North Dakota, having served as the executive director of the state's Indian Affairs Commission from 2009 to 2021. He became friends with Doug Burgum, then governor of North Dakota. When Burgum was confirmed as the 55th U.S. Secretary of the Interior last year, he tapped Davis to join his staff. Davis confesses he was hesitant.
When things start getting really busy and not enough people power in the Asia Highway, I said I would help them get things set up, and whether that was a year or 2 years, but it's certainly not intended by no means. Never my goal in life to be working government, but sometimes that's where the trainer puts you.
Davis says he's proud to have met with 400 tribes and addressed red tape, natural resources development, and probates while in federal office. He'll go back to his consulting and lobbying firm, Tatanka Consulting, which he founded in 2023. Among the groups praising Davis's tenure are the National Congress of American Indians and the Intertribal Buffalo Council. For National Native News, I'm Brian Bull.
And I'm Jill Freitas.
National Native News is produced by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation, with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Support by the Gathering of Nations Powwow. The last dance is this April 24th and 25th at Expo, New Mexico. Main Street will be native Route 66 with classic cars, motorcycles, roving dance performances, and more. Tickets at gatheringofnations.com and at the gates.
Hear that? Tribal college faculty do so much. One can't say it all here. Nothing but respect. Visit mostthoroughdescription.com. The American Indian College Fund supports this program.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
This is Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce, and we are broadcasting live from the Denina Civic and Convention Center in downtown Anchorage, Alaska. Final day of the Arctic Encounter Summit, where we've been able to meet Indigenous leaders, researchers, advocates, and change makers living in and focused on the Arctic. Kelly Moneymaker's documentary films show traditional Indigenous lifestyles that are being upended by climate change. Moneymaker, who is Samoan and raised by an adoptive Inupiaq father, says her multicultural background serves to inspire the stories she wants to tell. Prior to her film work, she was part of the enormously successful female pop vocal group Exposé, which rivaled the Supremes in their number of top 10 hits. Now, Moneymaker works as an independent film producer to highlight Indigenous voices. And Unungan tribal leader Crystal Dushkin joins us later in the hour to talk about economic challenges in the Aleutian Islands. But first, we're going to get an overview of key discussions taking place this week at the Arctic Encounter Summit with its founder, Rachel Callender. Listeners, you can join us today. The number to join the show, 1-800-996-2848. That is also 1-800-99-NATIVE. We're joined now by Rachel Callender. She is the founder and CEO of Arctic Encounter Summit. Rachel, welcome back to Native America Calling. Pleasure to have you back on the show.
So glad to be here, and so glad y'all could be at the summit this year again.
Absolutely. Wouldn't miss it. Now, no shortage of insightful conversations pertaining to the Arctic at this year's summit, especially involving Indigenous people, Indigenous voices, topics ranging from oil drilling to tribal sovereignty. What are the highlights for you so far?
Oh, my gosh. So many things. I'm really pleased to see a large delegation here this year from Greenland. I think that that's been really top of mind, of course, naturally, anyone reading the news right now. I think that it's always just a joy for me to both hear from and reconnect with leaders from all over the circumpolar north whom I already know and have worked in this capacity with for years. But then every year I'm surprised to meet like brand new bright minds that I haven't encountered, and the conversations are always inspiring. I'm always learning, and I think we've covered a lot of ground on topics as you mentioned, but I think some of the bright spots for me have actually been, I guess I'd highlight a couple other things other than the panels. For me, it's the Far North Fashion Show. That's a conversation in itself, right? Of course, we had the lovely Angela Cox emceeing, but she's just highlighting the designers as they come out. I always feel like I'm having a dialogue with the artists when I'm at the show, even though it's not a spoken word show, right? And then we have the expanded artist market downstairs this year, thanks to a new partnership with the Alaska Native Heritage Center. Similar experience in that way there. And then last night, I don't know if you all were able to attend, but Inuit Night was such epic energy with traditional foods, drumming, singing, dancing, everything. And so I think that those components for me, I mean, I'm happy to go into, the topics on the panels, but you asked me out the gate what I was kind of thinking about, and I think that those three highlights for me, they still say a lot, even if they're not on a traditional sort of panel speaking setting stage.
Well, it's really strategic the way you set the agenda, and everything builds upon itself, and there are just so many opportunities for people to network and learn about other issues. And another aspect of the summit that really impresses me is the diversity of opinions. especially on some of the hot topics like resource extraction. On one side of the room, you'll have environmentalists, and you'll have people who are, very pro oil and gas development. How do you work to ensure that you have the diverse number of speakers on these issues and you have all the perspectives presented?
Basically through, it's like an onion. We're like building an onion from the outside in, hopefully, instead of the inside out. I think that as we start to get a sense of the speakers coming in and we're building sort of this skeleton framework of the program, my team and I, and in consultation with our board, which is a very diverse board at Arctic Encounter, we sort of try to look at every single conversation throughout the 3 days and almost try to be self-critical of what is missing. Now, do we always get that right? No. And a lot of times I would say that's, and I'm sure other conveners could relate to this dilemma, sometimes you don't have every single voice present on the stage, both because then you would cheapen the conversation, right? Speakers would not have enough time to contribute if you just put way too many voices on the stage at once, but also because some of the topics are so subject matter specific, right? Yesterday we had a group on stage where nuclear sub-activity in the North Atlantic was discussed, and Faroe Islands was there to talk about this very unique port call agreement that they have, which includes, occasionally Russia. So that is so specific and subject matter expertise that we don't want to take away from the value of the debate by adding voices that wouldn't naturally fit, right? But there are other panels that are less so and more broad, and it really is critical on those that we ensure that we're I don't want to say checking every box. It's not tokenism, but it is like, are we going to run into a point where everyone on stage agrees, or there's one huge gaping hole in the debate that's not represented? And so that's sort of the mechanics of how we try to do it. And of course, it's not always perfect, but that's the approach.
Right. And it shouldn't be perfect. I mean, that's part of the beauty, is that it's live and it's organic in terms of how conversations and dialogues evolve. And that's a good segue into my next question, because Alaska Governor Mike Dunleavy was a speaker at the event, and he was recently appointed to the U.S. Arctic Research Commission, and he said he's going to emphasize national security in the Arctic. And, of course, security's been a big topic here at the summit this week. What have been some of the takeaways that you've really found valuable from those discussions?
So I think that we're still learning a lot at Arctic Encounter, both last year and this year, about, I'm speaking from the U.S. lens. I know most of your listeners, I think, are in the U.S. So we're still learning a lot. I am certainly, about what the priorities are of the Trump administration, and speaking about our own federal government here. And that's been really important, not just for this convening for the Americans in attendance, but as you know, we have speakers representing, I believe, 27 nations and participants from 30. And so we really want to, the U.S. is a major player, one of 8 Arctic nations, and we really want to make sure that we're building out a platform here that is actually neutral enough to bring everyone to the table. We work really hard to try to ensure that. Of course, everyone on our team has their own individual opinions. We're humans, right? But we really try to remove that when we're in production for the summit. And I don't know if I just went on a tangent and forgot the premise of your first question. But I guess my point is we're learning a lot, right, with this new administration when it comes to our federal priorities. And we're always trying to run this balance of providing both Arctic 101 to someone stepping into this event with no knowledge, who's here to learn. We don't want it to be so technical that it's not a welcoming environment for that person, because that's the point of education, right? Is not to be over people's heads, but to meet them where they are. And at the same time, for people who are experts living in the Arctic, working on Arctic policy, business, investment, what have you, scientific research, we really want to make sure at the same time it's valuable for that person and that they're still learning something new after maybe a 40, 50-year career in this space, right? Mm-hmm. So, of course, back to my point, can we achieve that perfectly every time? No, but it's a noble pursuit.
Absolutely. Now, this is the 11th summit and I know it's grown enormously since you first started. But take us back to that very first summit, and what was it that really inspired you to start this initiative and just to follow it through now to the 11th event and the global scope, the significance, the attendees from all over the world, as well as other stakeholders, political leaders. I mean, you just must be enormously proud, but at the same time, probably a little overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah, I get overwhelmed all the time. I cannot get through a Far North fashion show without crying. So I'll just throw that right out there right now. You should have seen how much I was crying last year because I had a 1-month-old baby. So the hormones kicked in when those models came down the runway, guys. No, do we have time for a short story?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Okay,
a couple minutes before the first break.
Okay. So real quick, you asked what inspired me. So I'm not from above the Arctic Circle, but I'm born and raised in Alaska. I'm also not indigenous, but I grew up in a very rural community in Alaska where most of my adopted aunties and uncles and cousins, right, were all indigenous to my community, the Eyak people in Cordova, Alaska. And so I although that's not my ancestry, I've grown up in this bubble, right, in a community that's only accessible by boat or plane, and my family are like chosen Alaskans, chosen Cordovans. So that's how I feel. That's how I connect. And I grew up commercial fishing, and when I was 3 years old, the Exxon Valdez oil spill happened basically in our backyard. This was a fundamental, critical catalyst event, as many of you might know. We were in litigation for 21 years. 4,000 plaintiffs died before it reached the Supreme Court. I mean, this was a journey that changed lives and intergenerations and families, right? And long story short, you might be scratching your head, what does this have to do with the Arctic? That's in the northern Gulf of Alaska. But basically, I understood on a deep level what it was like to have something happen to you. Mm-hmm. And it become this national and international dialogue. But yet my community, and I feel very confident saying this, felt like we didn't have much of a say in that scenario. And so that is something that I've lived in a very different way than a lot of people in the Arctic, right? And I'm not making this about oil spills or environmental incidents, but that it's a longer story, but that's my nutshell of sort of like what brought me to this. I was in law school studying maritime law and got really fascinated about the Arctic and icebreakers and yeah.
Rachel Callender, founder and CEO of Arctic Encounter Summit, kicking off our discussion today on Native America Calling. Between writing novels, Ojibwe author Louise Erdrich also pens short stories that are equally as poignant and rich. Her new book, Python's Kiss, is a collection of short stories that are illustrated by Asa Erdrich Abe, Louise's daughter and an accomplished artist in her own right. Python's Kiss is on our Native bookshelf on the next Native America Calling.
Who protects Indian country? Amerant does. As the only 100% tribally owned insurance carrier, Amerant helps strengthen tribal communities by providing reliable insurance coverage and keeping dollars in Indian country. From property and liability to commercial auto and tribal workers' compensation, Amerant is here to protect what matters. Celebrating 40 years of serving Indian country. Learn more at amerant.com. That's AMERIND.com.
Thank you for listening to Native America Calling. I'm your host, Sean Spruce, and we're reviewing this year's Arctic Encounter Summit. And we're going to talk now with Alaska-based Samoan filmmaker Kelly Moneymaker, who is seated across the table from me right now. Listeners, we've got the phone lines open for anyone who would like to join us. Call 1-800-996-2848. You can also continue this conversation by leaving a comment on our website, nativeamericacalling.com, or any of our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram. We also have Blue Sky and Threads, so engage with us here on Native America Calling. Let's now meet Kelly Moneymaker. She is a creative media producer, and she is Samoan. She grew up just up the road a ways in Fairbanks, Alaska. Kelly, it's great to have you on the show. We met here last year at Arctic Encounter.
Yes, we did. Thank you so much for asking me to be on air today.
Well, appreciate you taking the time to come down. I know you're really busy. Let's talk first about your films. And they look at Indigenous people and from a wide range of areas, Pacific Islands all the way to the Arctic. And many of these people are on the forefront of climate change. Why is that a recurring theme in the work that you do?
I think my multicultural background plays into that. You know, I was born and raised and adopted at birth by my dad, John Henry Moneymaker, and my mom, Flo Moneymaker. And Dad is Inupiaq, and my mom was Irish Italian. And I always felt, you know, they told me when I was young I was adopted, but for some reason I always thought that my dad was my biological dad, and I didn't find out. I didn't really put the pieces together in my brain because, you know, when you're little, you just, those are your parents. My dad is my dad, right? Yeah. My mom is my mom. But, you know, I got to meet my biological mom, and now we have a relationship, and I want my daughter to know her and know her Samoan culture. So I'm learning more about the Samoan culture now, and I was raised basically knowing more about the Inupiaq side of our family. My grandma was a mukluk maker, and she and my Aunt Laura had Laura's parkas. They made parkies, and even Elvis and Shirley MacLaine had them back in the 60s, you know. So I'm very proud of my Alaskan heritage. But I think that this multicultural side, and I feel really blessed that I was able to go to Samoa and learn about that by filming Waka, which is about the Tokelauan people and their use of modern technology and traditional wisdom in response to climate change. And while I was there, I was thinking, man, all of these issues that we're seeing here, they relate to a lot about what we're going through at home. But we're on the other end of it. The ice is melting here. It's inundating them. You know, they get storm surges that just wipe out everything on the island. And so, and they're citizens of New Zealand. And now they're thinking that they might have to do a mass migration to New Zealand because they're at sea level and there's nowhere to go. There's no mountains, there's no trees. You get the top of a one-story school. That's your safety zone. So I felt their vulnerability. It was a 55-hour boat ride from Samoa to Tokelau, the first island. We landed almost Haka'aho. And so, so I put those pieces together, and I was like, you know, I just felt like I needed to come home and be supportive. And it's not really, when you said it's the stories I want to tell, it's not my stories. These are not my stories. I act as a listener facilitator. That's my team and I. We go in and we ask permission to come into a village. My thesis was, are you ready for this super long title?
Yeah.
I even had to bring it so I can remember it because it's so long.
Got your cheat sheet there.
Yeah, it's Drum Song and Spirit Mask, a multiple-eyed scene, indigenous methodological framework for ethical documentary filmmaking. And alongside this thesis was my film, Drum Song, The Rhythm of Life. Yeah. And that was about indigenous climate adaptation in Northwest Alaska. And it was during COVID, so I wasn't allowed to come up here. I was stuck in New Zealand because we had a serious lockdown there. And then, and I was doing everything over the phone. So trying to conduct interviews over the phone with the intermittent connectivity of rural Alaska was really a challenge. But luckily, I hired the most awesome team. I had Tom Trainer and Dennis Davis. Dennis Davis is called the Eskimo Fixer from Shishmaref. And Tom Trainer is, an Emmy-nominated DP I stole him from Deadliest Catch. And I was just watching credits to put together the team because I wanted it to be local people who understood village life so that they would be respectful. And so through that, I was able to put together a COVID protocol as well, so you can continue to do filmmaking or creative projects if you're hiring locally, and then that money also stays within the local economy. And Dennis is amazing. He knows everybody everywhere. And so we were able to put together this film. And then I asked for permission to come home and finish my degree offshore from New Zealand so I could finish the film out in person. Right. Yeah.
And it was last year that you did a screener for Drum Song, The Rhythm of Life. And what I also think is really fascinating is that many of the interviewees in your films, past and present speakers from here at the Arctic Encounter Summit, such as Jackie Schaefer, who was also at the screening last year. Tell me more about some of the most memorable moments from the interviews that you capture.
It's life-changing. I mean, each region I've been able to film throughout Alaska now, And just for Drum Song alone, we have 70 terabytes of data for that film. And we edited it down to a 50-minute version of it, but now it's being developed into a series, which is, we're trying very hard. We had a distribution deal, and then that fell through, and now we're reworking. We have a new showrunner come on board to help us out. So, but I've been able to film all over. Last year, I filmed the Culture Camp in Cake, and then I was in Craig and shooting all over Prince of Wales Island, and in Juneau and everywhere I go. It's just and then at home in Fairbanks as well. So it's a real blessing because everywhere I go, I learn something new. Just like Rachel was talking about, you learn every time. Each village is different. They process fish differently. There's so much history behind everything they do, and you learn. And my job is to listen, and I just learn so much by listening. So it's really inspiring, and I feel that the world is in trouble, environmentally and otherwise, and people aren't as nice to each other.
Right.
On social media, everyone attacks everyone else, and it's all about shout TV. I feel like if we could just get back to listening, we would solve so many more problems, and we would learn so much more from the indigenous people who've been the stewards of the land, air, and sea for millennia. I feel like that is the answer.
Yeah. Kelly, I want to ask you about your transition. Of course, we mentioned earlier you were a member of the very, very popular female vocal group Exposé, big pop star, hanging in L.A. and New York and jet setting. And now you're doing documentary filmmaking. What inspired that transition, and what's that been like for you just to make that pivot? And I know you're still very involved in your music and you're still recording and everything, but you have so many other aspects of your career that you're passionate about.
I have severe insomnia. And I'm super hyper. I don't sit around much. I'm always doing something, and so I just love being creative, and I love helping people, and I love expression, and that exchange of energy with an audience is something so special, right? Because every night is different. But I think I've been a storyteller since I was a little kid, writing songs. I started writing at 11 years old. I started singing at 2. I told my dad when I was 2 I was going to grow up and be a singer. So I was really fortunate to know what I wanted to do early on. And then I've been telling stories in 3, 4, 5 minute formats. And I feel like filmmaking is just a wider expression of that. And it's the complementary expression of that. And I still get to do the music because I do the sound design and we write songs for the films if necessary. I try to use songs from the local areas where I'm filming. That's the priority. But my co-writer that I've been writing music with for 30 years, he's just a virtuoso, and he's also a composer. He does, he did Parenthood and White Collar and all these Without a Trace and stuff. So he's just a brilliant musician, Gabriel Moses.
And your music, like when you were in Exposé, of course, you were part of a group, and it was very much of a commercial focus. And now a lot of your music is more independent, and you're working with, maybe a little bit different type of creative energy. But talk about that a little bit. What was it like, with Exposé, and now the music you create now?
Oh, the industry is so different too. So the music I create is different, and that audience, some of the really loyal Exposé fans have come over to support me in what I do, but the sound is very different. Same with Jeanette, the other, the main singer that has most of the hits under her belt. Joya and Jeanette have the main hits in the group, and Jeanette has her own band called Last House, which is roots rock, and then mine is blues rock. I have 3 new singles out right now on my YouTube channel, and we just surpassed 400,000 views on Raising a Ghost. And Raising a Ghost is a song about basically seeking guidance from your ancestors, right, to help us through these troubling times. And it talks a lot about, I try to sneak in there sort of institutional racism and things like that within the lyrics. But, it's mostly just about family and trusting your community, whether they're present in this realm or beyond. And so we've really had such an amazing positive response to that song. I also have Reclamation out, which was the song for Drum Song, The Rhythm of Life. It was the title track. And it's a land back song, Yeah, it's whose land are you on, whose dream did you steal? The rich and the poor divide is real. Whose land are you on, whose dream did you steal? Reclamation. So and I feel this journey has sort of been a reclamation of my my heritage on both sides. I was able to really learn this filmmaking. I had Maori mentors at school, and I was able to really discover my Pacifica heritage by working in the South Pacific. And then I have been able to learn so much from our Alaskan indigenous communities, work alongside them, because everything I do is co-production of knowledge. So I have a specific methodology that we follow, and we try to be very respectful. One thing is Linda Tuhuai-Smith, who's a Maori writer, she basically writes that research is a dirty word, because the researched, it's never about them. So in Alaska we say, not about us, without us. And I make sure everyone's paid for their time, because people come in from the lower 48 or from another country, and they don't understand that when you're asking for participation and co-production from a native community, you're preventing them from hunting and fishing to provide for their families. And so I want to make sure I cover that time financially, just as a sign of respect.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you also, because a lot of indigenous communities, they have people come in and want to document or research or film, and there's always that trust responsibility that you have, right? And to show that you're not just somebody here who's going to take a story and run, right? You're invested in these communities.
It's called showing face, right? You want to be an ally. You want to be there for the communities, because they're telling you their truth and they're trusting you to help them facilitate their story. And it's your responsibility to make sure the wider world knows about it. So we've been very fortunate. When I did Vaca, we premiered at COP25 in Madrid, and that set us on a trajectory for the film festival circuit. And then when we did Drum Song Rhythm Life, we premiered at the UNFCCC COP28 in Dubai. And they gave me 2 screenings, which was very cool. One was for the ICCI, and the second one was by the UN. They gave me a private room to show the film twice. So it was so interesting to watch different communities, different indigenous communities from around the world watch the film. So, because I worked alongside the science communities as well as the native communities for drum song, because you want to prove, we have all this indigenous knowledge that's thousands and thousands of years of knowledge and practice, but the Western side doesn't really recognize it. So I wanted to find that interface where people could see side-by-side comparisons of this is what the scientists say and this is what the indigenous communities are doing. They're leading the climate adaptation, right? They're leading it. So we had to show the world this is valuable information that can help everyone, and to make sure that the Native voices were elevated and recognized for their knowledge. So it was a really interesting thing. But to watch the Nigerians, or any, we had so many cultures come through the ICCI and watch the film. And so when an indigenous person was talking, they were like, yes, they'd get up off their chairs and like, yes. And then a scientist would talk and they'd say, oh, and they'd start writing, writing notes. And it went back and forth like that. And I created all these friends of all these different communities. I had a Tongan leader come up and hug me and cry because, he recognized the relationship, right? And I know that in Southeast Alaska, they have a real relationship with the Maori. And there's a cultural exchange going on. And then in Nome and in St. Lawrence Island, there's a real relationship with the Chukchis because they're cousins. And so one of the things that, here we're at Arctic Encounters and we're talking about, security. And I brought up at COP28, why don't you use the Native Network? They're the eyes on the channel to source food. Walrus is in common up there, right? Why aren't you using the Native eyes on the channel to inform you of who's coming through the channel, right? Why do you have to go build all these giant outposts that cross lakes, rivers, and streams and cause more permafrost erosion and blah, blah, blah? And then Google AI is coming in to map the coast, and that's, but AAOKH has been doing that for 50 years, right? So, or whatever, 25, 50 years, I don't know. They've got these, they've got all this data of where we were 100 years ago, where we are now, and where we're going in the next 100 years. And then with AI, who owns the data? You can't come into indigenous communities and say, oh, that's not now my information, right? Because who owns the traditional knowledge at that point? So there's so much to be worked out, and that's why this forum and this symposium is so important, or the summit, they call it summit now. But Arctic Entry is important because this is where these conversations are taking place in real time. So I'm honored to be part of it. Rachel actually gave me the opportunity to show Drum Song last year. We had such an activated audience. We had so many questions that I was there for an hour after the screening and our Q&A and still talking to people because they had ongoing questions. And that to me shows, and also the fact that we've had this amazing trajectory on the film festival circuit. I'm not much into the awards, but the awards show that there is a hunger for this knowledge. And we've been able to show, and I think there's been like 24 awards for Drum Song. 2 of them are humanitarian awards. And all the kudos belong to the communities that have co-created these projects with me. I just feel completely humbled and honored. And I don't know, it's changed my life. And I'm very happy to keep going and keep telling more stories. And we have so many more stories. Like I said, last year was filming Culture Camp in Cake, and the kids were just phenomenal. And the fact that their community leaders were teaching them how to process their foods. And when I talked to the kids, what was your favorite part of Culture Camp? Because when they came in, they're all on their devices, nobody's talking to each other. By the end of camp, they're pulling a 700-pound sea lion. They weren't able to catch a sea lion for 38 years. And they went and hunted one, and the hunters brought it to the shore, and the kids had to carry it across the beach, 700 pounds, and they worked like a well-oiled machine to get that sea lion to the processing tables. And so for me, it's just magic.
Kelly Moneymaker, I could listen to you talk all day, but we've got to take a short break. We're going to come back. We'll continue the conversation, and we've got the phone lines open. I think, and especially folks up here in Alaska who are familiar with Kelly Moneymaker's work, give us a call, 1-800-99-NATIVE.
Support by the Gathering of Nations Powwow. The last dance is this April 24th and 25th at Expo, New Mexico. Main Street will be native Route 66 with classic cars, motorcycles, roving dance performances, and more. Tickets at gatheringofnations.com and at the gates.
Ready to expand your reach and inspire change? Kaufman & Associates crafts culturally grounded communication strategies for Native audiences. More at kaufmaninc.com. KAUFFMANINC.com.
Thank you for listening to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce, and we are broadcasting live today from the Arctic Encounter Summit in downtown Anchorage, Alaska. Let's continue now with our conversation with Alaska-based Samoan filmmaker Kelly Moneymaker. And for those of you who would like to join our conversation, give us a call. What are you waiting for? Just pick up the phone. Call 1-800-99-NATIVE. You can share your perspectives, your insights, or ask a question to Kelly Moneymaker. Again, that number, 1-800-99-NATIVE. Kelly, I want to talk about your family a little bit. I know you draw a lot of inspiration from your family, and of course your husband is a very accomplished actor himself. Talk a little bit about your life, behind the, when you're not on camera, when you're not working, when you're not traveling.
Well, I'm a mom and a wife and a dog lover. I love being outside. Being outside is my happy place. Also, when my daughter was born, she never wanted to be indoors, so we're always doing something. My husband's an avid mountain biker, and he's also, into the environmental side of life, and he collects soybean oil from restaurants and filters it, and that's how we power our Land Cruiser. And with gas prices going up, I'm very grateful for him doing that. So he put in a heater into the car when we moved here, into the Land Cruiser, to keep the veggie oil from freezing.
And you folks were all in New Zealand together during the pandemic as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, we went to New Zealand to open a food, wine, and music boutique festival company, mid-level, because they had big concerts there, and then they had clubs, but we didn't see anyone doing more specialized boutique events. And we went over there on an entrepreneur visa, and then they canceled it after we moved there. And they said it had a 90% failure rate, and we weren't grandfathered in. So the fastest way for me to get a visa was to go back to school, which I'm grateful I did. I learned a lot at Massey University in Wellington, and we had a beautiful community. I had such beautiful neighbors there. And Peter was helping with native planting, taking the invasive species out and helping with the community that way. Loden just loved going to school there. And there's a lot of people that we left behind that we definitely miss. And I was working with the Maori community there and learning a lot from them as well. And so that's why my thesis ended up having Samoan, Maori, and Inupiaq indigenous principles, guiding principles. So, it was a beautiful existence, but I was doing my bachelor's there, and the government kept moving the goalposts, so we couldn't stay. Every time I got close to residency, they would move the goalposts, and so I ended up doing my master's there as well. And I think they were planning on me doing my PhD, but I asked for permission to come home because I literally heard a voice that said, it's time to come home. And so I honored that and brought my family back here, and my husband loves me that much. We've moved a lot, but our daughter is about to go to university. She's applying for some different schools, and so, so he's going to get ready to go back to acting and doing what he loves, and he basically switched roles because I stayed at home and stopped touring to be there for Loden, and then he switched over he wanted to spend time with her. He realized he was missing a lot of firsts, and so he stayed at home to be with her and let me build the film company, and so we're both getting back to our original things. Like he's going back to acting, and then I've been setting up a tour. So our first gig is at Harvell's in Santa Monica with Jeanette Gerardo's band Last House and myself.
And that's coming up this summer.
That's coming up this summer, and then I'm working on. I'm not even sure I'm supposed to announce this yet, but I will be playing at the fair. We're working on that through a cousin.
Alaska State Fair.
Yeah, through a cousin. The Cousin Network. Just found out that Wes is a cousin.
Right, our engineer here for the week.
Yeah. So from the Nome side of my family. Mm-hmm. So like I said, I've got 3 singles out. We've got 8 more to go. And the response I took a 15-year hiatus from music, and to have this kind of love and support coming back it's been astounding. It's like, wow,
And we were chatting a little bit before the show. You're getting ready to fly down to L.A. tomorrow to do some recording, right?
Yes. I have a new single coming out, and I have a local filmmaker here who's going to help me. He's going to follow me around with a drone as I hike through the mountains for the video, which is going to be pretty fun. I'm just getting ready to go down. So I have a studio here, and I do film editing and music here, but it's hard when you're engineering yourself, and you have to push all the buttons, and you're trying to be the artist, and you're trying to sing, and you're pushing the buttons, and then you got to edit. And I was like, I missed my engineer, Frank Rosado. He's like so amazing in every way, and he's definitely a singer's engineer. It's almost like he knows what you need before you know what you need. Uh-huh. And we've worked together forever. Like he engineered my first album, so my first solo album after I left Expose. So I just wanted to go sing with Frank. He's like my security blanket.
And in addition to Frank, you've got a really great team of musicians. Tell me more about your band, because I know you've got a really good guitar player and people that have worked with a lot of other highly respected artists in the industry.
Yeah, so my drummer was with me in Expose, and then I left Expose, and we started a band called Big Pygmies, and we've been together forever. And that's Herman Matthews. He's from Tower of Power, East Bay Soul, and he also plays with Teresa James, and now he has his own band called Fatback Earl and Me. And then my bass players, I have 2 that switch back and forth, and Wade Berry is from Alaska. He's from Juneau, but he's toured with like Kenny Loggins and Don Felder from the Eagles. And my other bass player, Mike Manell, he also has toured with Kenny Loggins. And then my guitar player, Gabriel Moses, who is also my co-writer and co-producer. We've been doing music together forever. And he was with Macy Gray, but he's also a composer. So he does a lot of TV shows that you've seen, like Parenthood and blah, blah, blah. He's composing for those shows. Yeah.
And you do a lot of your recording at home as well as in other studios. You use Pro Tools. So it sounds like you're able, even if you have band members in different parts of the country, you can still collaborate with your technology.
Yeah, I mean, I try to do the basic tracks with the drums and the bass at Frank's studio or another studio. because just the drum room, it sounds amazing in there. Frank built the room himself. It sounds phenomenal. And I might be doing some stuff in Frostline here for another artist I'm producing here in Anchorage. Her name's Toril, and she's Amber Webb's daughter. Amber Webb, who did the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Cuspic, she's from Dillingham. She's Yupik. And her daughter has a lovely voice. And so we've done a story about Amber, and as we edit it down, we're going to add her daughter's songs to the soundtrack. So we've already cut those tracks in L.A., and she'll be doing the vocals in my studio. So I primarily do like a lot of percussion stuff or vocals, overdubs in my own room, because my room's small. It's a tiny little cubby hole. But I definitely do film editing and sound design in there as well.
And I've seen a lot of videos with you playing guitar, and I always thought you were a guitar player, but you really use that more as a writing tool.
Yeah.
As opposed to performing, right?
I mean, songs come to me in different ways. Sometimes they come in full blocks. You know, I have the lyrics and the melody together, and then I'll find the chords on guitar, or sometimes I use piano. Sometimes I'll sing the parts. If I can't find the chord I want on piano or guitar, I will sing the harmonies to it. And but they say guitar owner. I'm kind of on the guitar owner side. I don't accompany myself live anymore because I'm not that good at guitar. I'll just be straight up honest. I'm not that good, but I love writing on it, and it's fun to play at home. But I have so many more people who are so much more talented at what they do that I just make sure that I surround myself with the best musicians ever. And this record, we've changed it up because I have the Bissonette brothers, Greg and oh my God, I'm totally spacing out this morning. Matt Bissonette are the rhythm section on a couple songs. And then I had my friend, the bass player from Big Pygmies, Dwayne Smitty Smith. He came in and played with Donald Barrett. Donald Barrett plays with Lady Gaga. So I've changed it up on this record because Herman was busy with like 5 million things. And you know, it's just, you always want to change things up and keep it fresh. And so we've had a lot of collaboration with other musicians outside my normal band for this record, and it's been a lot of fun. The Bissonettes played on Reclamation, and then Donald and Smitty played on Raising a Ghost, and Herman and Mike played on She's So Heroin. So She's So Heroin, we shot the video at Obsession Records, you know, which really supports local musicians, and they're just the loveliest people. So I try to feature places that are meaningful and give back to community. So I'm figuring out where we're going to shoot. Black Coffee's the next single, and we're trying to figure out where we're going to shoot this. But I really want to just be outside in the mountains. So the video might not make sense. We did a live taping with a band at my friend's studio in Malibu. She's a phenomenal singer, Wendy Wagner, and we used her room, Olive Grove Sound. And it's just a beautiful place on a lake, and we shot in there in this gorgeous room. So I don't know how I'm going to pull this together. So if you guys have any ideas, ring me up.
You'll make it work.
Let me know.
You'll make it work. I want to go back to your climate change work. And do you have any other projects coming up, or any communities that you're interested in working with and sharing stories and helping facilitate those stories like you talked about?
Well, right now we're getting ready for market, trying to get distribution for the series, Drum Song, the docuseries. And then within that, we're developing the other docuseries for Cake and Craig. And then I just shot a short called Ziggy, and I produced it, and Tom Trainer, my DP, he directed it. And he did an amazing job. So it's only been in 3 film festivals so far, which were our curation festivals. They're the ones that like HIF and TIFF and Sundance look to say, well, who are the new filmmakers? Who are the people that we need to be watching? And we've won 7 awards in 3 of those festivals, and that's boding very well. And that's about Ziggy, a local hero here in Anchorage, Richard Ziggy Ziegler, who paints all the beautiful murals downtown, a lot of them about the mushing and blah, blah, blah. And so it's about Ziggy's activism and his artivism, I guess you'd say, because he advocates for the forgotten. The missing and murdered indigenous peoples, he's an advocate. And he helps the homeless population because he was homeless at one point. So he is just such a special human doing what he can do to, help his fellow humans. He just, one of the issues we talk about is, not having enough toilets downtown, and how he's remedied that in his way that he could, because to put bathrooms downtown was $1 million a toilet, right? And taxpayers didn't want to do that. And he's like, yeah, I understand you wouldn't want to do that. But he figured out a way to deal with it. And so hopefully we'll have a community screening, or it'll be part of Anchorage International Film Festival. I was part of Anchorage International Film Festival for the last 2 years because they saw Drum Song and they asked me to come and help them and sort of give advice as far as making it more Alaska-centric. And so we created the Native Voices Showcase, which I had the honor of producing the last 2 years. And I asked Princess Dazrai Johnson to join me on the board, who is such an important filmmaker here in Alaska. She's just incredibly talented. And she had Two Old Women, the short version of it, premiered last year at Anchorage International Film Festival, and she won an award for that. And so then I decided to step down because I've got so many projects going, and we're promoting Ziggy actively on the film festival circuit while we're trying to edit the other footage that we've taken. I mean, I have so much footage. Drum Song alone is 70 terabytes, right. But each community I go to is a minimum of 40 to 50 terabytes. And so it's a lot of editing that needs to be going on, and packaging as far as pitching.
And just to put that in perspective, 70 terabytes, I mean, like, how many hours of footage is that?
I can't even tell you. Yeah. I can't even do the conversion math, and that's above my pay grade. But when I stepped down, Princess is really close to Philip Blanchett from Bumua. And Philip was part of Drum Song. He was actually my Drum Song dancer throughout the entire film. Was part of the soundtrack, and he was an interviewee and a collaborator all the way through. Philip was amazing. He even flew up to Shishmaref to record the drummers there for the documentary. He's just a phenomenal human being. So I stepped back, and we both were working on it. Please join the board. So now they'll be, and the two of them are going to take over and do the Native Voices Showcase, and that makes me so excited to see what they're going to do this year. And we have two festival directors that have come up from LA, and they've infused it with all this lifeblood and brought up, great films. And, it's just the collaboration between all of them is just going to be phenomenal. So I'm very excited about that.
The art scene up here is has it always been this hot, or has it really grown just in recent years?
I feel like it was a long time ago, and then we lost our film incentive, and I know that the local filmmakers are really working on that, trying to get that back. Princess is part of that movement, and we really need a film commission here. We desperately need the Alaska Film Commission. So with that tax incentive and the film commission, I feel that we have so much talent up here, and we have so many beautiful stories from all the different communities across Alaska. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what happens. Yeah.
I'm excited too. And Kelly, thank you again. This has been wonderful. I'm so glad we were able to get you on this show today. And I'm just looking forward to everything you have planned. I can't wait for your next project, whether it's a single or an album or a documentary film, whatever. I know it's going to be fantastic. And I just wish you just continued success going forward.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you so much for asking me to be part of this today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. With that, we're going to have to wrap up the conversation, but big thanks today to Kelly Moneymaker, who spoke with us, and also Rachel Callender, who kicked off the conversation, founder and CEO of Arctic Encounter Summit. And with that, I encourage you all to join us again next week. We'll have a conversation on Monday with acclaimed Turtle Mountain Chippewa author Louise Erdrich about her new book, Python's Kiss. Our executive producer is Art Hughes. Our producers are Andy Murphy, Sol Traverso, and Joe Thompson. Marino Spencer is the engineer. Thanks also this week to Lauren Dixon, Wes Goodwin, and Van Kraft for their assistance with engineering. Joe McPolin is the digital producer. Nola Daves Moses is the distribution director. Bob Peterson is the network manager for Native Voice One. Clifton Chadwick is our national underwriting sales director. Charles Sather is our chief operations officer. The president and CEO of Quantic Broadcast Corporation is Jacqueline Salee. Have a safe weekend. I'm Sean Spruce.
Tribal colleges and universities support their students in countless ways. They say I believe and offer help before it's asked.
Hear that?
Fully give grace.
That's everything tribal college faculty do for their students on Fast Forward. Because if one tried to say it in real time, they'd be here all day. They teach, guide, comfort, and connect. And for that, the community is grateful. Learn more at mostthoroughdjobdescription.com. The American Indian College Fund supports this program.
They give extensions, cheer progress, share laughter, create calm, and allow reflection. They inspire hope, share wisdom, guide gently, validate feelings.
Who protects Indian country? Amerind does. As the only 100% tribally owned insurance carrier, Amerind helps strengthen tribal communities by providing reliable insurance coverage and keeping dollars in Indian country. From property and liability to commercial auto and tribal workers' compensation, Amerind is here to protect what matters. Celebrating 40 years of serving Indian country. Learn more at amerind.com. That's AMERIND.com.
Native America Calling is produced in the Annenberg National Native Voice Studios in Albuquerque, New Mexico by Quantic Broadcast Corporation, a Native nonprofit media organization. Funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting with support from the Public Radio Satellite Service. Music is by Brent Michael Davids. Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.